Welcome back, Volley Chiefs fans. This is Chief David Lenart here with our first new show of the year and a very special guest. I have Chief of the Brookfield Volunteer Fire Department, Andrew Ellis. I'm going to let him introduce himself, give him a little bit of his bio, then we're going to have a talk about family traditions in the fire service and a touch of recruiting and retention amongst volunteer services. So, Chief?
Well, David, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here. A little bit about myself. I 33 years in the fire service this year, or the year coming up, 2024. Second generation fire chief in Brookfield. My dad is a 55-year member of the fire company. Was chief for about 8 years. And of course, family traditions, it's in your blood, and I was around the firehouse growing up as a kid. And it kind of gave me some direction in my career path, obviously, and really wanted to get involved with the fire company, and I did when I was 16, and I've been there since.
Nice. Now, just give us a background of Brookfield, just so if people aren't from the area understand what it is.
Brookfield's a 18 square mile suburban community in northern Fairfield County with a very it's wedged between two of the largest man-made lakes in Connecticut, and it has a population of about 18,000 people. And it's a very a diverse response area for us. We have everything from cover about 11 miles of a highway, Route 7, a limited access highway, to some heavy industry, to residential occupancies that have no hydrants.
And you mentioned the two lakes. That's a big part of your game. It's Candlewood and
Lake Lenart.
Lake Lenart, and they're for those of us in the Connecticut area, they're like you said, they're big man-made lakes. And in the summertime, I mean, they take up a chunk of your weekends. Yes.
The Brookfield Volunteer Fire Company, I have the pleasure of also being the Chief Executive Officer of the ambulance service. We run the ambulance. We have a paramedic ambulance service. And the fire chief is the CEO of the ambulance. So that falls under my purview, too. So the ambulance is very busy in the summer. And our sister company, Candlewood Company, in Brookfield, it's a smaller fire company by the lake. They have a boat that is in the water like 7 months a year, and a smaller Zodiac boat, and that keeps them very busy. And we help staff that with them since they're a smaller company. And the lakes definitely keep us moving. We've had sometimes we have 5 drownings out in the lake a year. This year wasn't so bad. The year before was 4 or 5. So that does keep us hopping.
Yeah, and I think one thing that a lot of people lose focus is, I mean, obviously next to our like routine fires, accidents, gas leaks, water rescue is a big part of a lot of what a lot of us our smaller volunteer departments do.
It is, and we have our ice rescue suits, for example, are set up with 300-foot ropes, and we've had to add to them before for ice incidents out on Candlewood Lake or Lake Lenart. We have the sleds and whatnot, and that kind of drives our training, to specialize in some of those things. The lakes definitely are a challenge for us for sure.
Yeah, and so obviously, Andy and I have been friends for a very long time now, and one of the things we wanted to talk about was that family tradition in the fire service. And Chief Ellis, like he said, his father was involved. We've talked extensively about my family background. Why do you think that's such an important part of the fire service today?
Well, the fire service, in my opinion, I grew up in a second family in the firehouse in Brookfield, and the people that some of my best friends in the world I met at the firehouse when I was a young kid, and some people I looked up to my whole career, in the fire service, were people that were in the fire company. And in addition to just all of us being a family, when you bring your children around, we encourage that in Brookfield. And the fact that if you bring your children around and it's not something that takes mom or dad away from them, it's something they can be a part of. When you have cleanups or something that's appropriate to bring your kids to. I went to a lot of calls with my dad. I mean, that was my thing. I love going to calls with my dad, and I think that's what got me hooked.
Being children of the 80s.
Children of the 80s. We got to do some things maybe that weren't so kosher now, but we went to a lot of calls and did a lot of things. And
we saw things that no 5 or 10-year-old should have seen.
That's absolutely correct. And that's why it's funny that our we grew up kind of in the same type of family with people involved in public service, and especially the fire company. In Brookfield, that's like the hub of the town.
Yeah, and it is in a lot of communities. You know, again, even going back to the older time volunteer companies where you had the volunteer firehouse was the political machine. It has maintained that importance of being a neighborhood entity or a town-wide entity that the town takes pride in. And I think, crossing over, like we said, we want to talk about family tradition, we want to talk about recruiting and retention. I think you are 100% right about keeping the family atmosphere. Because if you could keep the family engaged, you'll keep the member engaged. And that's something that a lot of volunteer organizations don't realize.
Absolutely. If you keep the family aspect to that, and you make the families feel welcome there, and you include them in what's appropriate and what you can, you get a lot more out of the member. Okay, they're less apt to get some flack from your family when you go out to 2 meetings a week. And I mean, when you become a chief, there's meetings, there's drills, there's training, there's calls. I mean, we're going to do close to 1,200 fire calls this year in Brookfield, and probably 2,600 ambulance calls. So the pager's going off all the time, and it requires attention, in meetings or other issues that pop up. So if your family is behind it and they're supportive of it, I believe it's one less burden for the member to have on them. Thinking, oh my God, my family's going to be. A lot of times we'll have a Sunday morning cleanup or work detail at the firehouse. Well, we'll go get egg sandwiches at a deli, and we'll get enough for the family, for family members to come down. We know who's going to come, and we bring the kids down, and they help with sweeping the floors or rolling up some hose or doing whatever. It gets them involved, and it works. My son just turned 18 in November, and he joined the volunteer fire company with no pressure from me, believe it or not. It was his own thing. He said, "Dad, I think I want to join the firehouse." He told me a few months ago. I said, "That's great," and it was. I firmly believe it was exposure as a young kid. Because my kids go to a lot of calls, they're with me all the time, and they've taken a lot of runs, and he's into it.
Now, did you have that choice, or did you just know?
I knew. It was funny. I went to 3 years of Catholic school before my brother got us kicked out. He went there for 1 year, but that's neither here nor there. Across the street from our old center firehouse, it used to be our headquarters, and Sister Claire, when I was in first grade, called my mom and said, "Mrs. Ellis, all he does is sit there and look at the fire trucks when the siren go off." And
now the siren, did you guys have the game system?
We have a game system.
Things I miss so much.
We had a big 3-phase, like 6 horsepower, thing that the lights would dim in the firehouse when it would go off, and it was literally the school would shake. It would go off 1 time for an ambulance call, 3 times for a fire call, and I would look over at the fire trucks and I wouldn't pay attention. And she said, "Well, Sister Claire, his dad's at that point he was a fire captain. He's in the fire department. He really likes the fire service, and I expect nothing less. That he would be doing that. That's okay."
Yeah, I mean, and that's how it was for us. Being multi-generational, we grew up in it. I mean, my grandfather used to come to school to pick us up to go to the fires in the valley.
We used to be able to leave high school.
We were too.
And my mom would know where I was and what I was doing by where my pickup truck was on the side of the road, what was going on, or she would hear me and know that I wasn't at school.
Right. So cool. What year did you graduate high school?
1993.
Okay, so I was 96, and that was the way it worked in Derby was you had to maintain above a C+ average in all your classes, and you could leave. So we would carry our pagers, or they would call the school and get us. It was me, my brother, the Salem twins. They would make the announcement. Well, the Lenarts and the Salems come to the office, and we knew that there was a fire. Oh, we gotta go.
Gotta head out. It's funny. A bunch of us that joined the firehouse together as second generation or third generation. The Gravis boys are third generation firemen. We're all on the job now, and we're still. Sean McKenney was one of our guys with us. He's a lieutenant in Stratford. He's the Reading Ridge fire chief. So it still stays. All those kids going to high school, growing up that way, and taking in calls. It does make a huge difference, an impact when you're young and you have that sort of exposure. I believe it really has an impact. A mutual friend of ours talks about his time in Long Island as a little kid, the firehouse, and he's right. You get that exposure, and the firehouse makes you feel welcome. Well, that's an environment you want to be in. So.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing that I always say about the generational thing is, look at where it led all of us. Like you said, how many of us, went from our parents volunteered, our grandparents volunteered, but then we turned it into careers.
Yes.
And I mean, think about how many people do you know that did that? I mean, I would lose count.
Exactly. And I always, when I have guys in the fire company, I have 12 or 13 guys that are on a job, different places, various jobs. 3 of them in Bridgeport. Ricky, my driver, he's cool dude. He's from Brookfield, and he's a active firefighter there. And those guys, I'm the biggest cheerleader for them. When I just had two guys graduate the fire academy, one's going to Greenwich, one's going to Danbury, and that's great for us. I give them the same speech that I give everybody. Don't forget where you came from.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. When the fire company in my opinion, the fire company got me where I am today. And I know that the old timers, if you will, I really know that they were the folks that helped me mold my career. And gave me that kick in the ass when I needed it, or pat on the back when I deserved it, but mostly kick in the ass, and got me to where I am. And the exposure to that fire company again is that it's important. That sense of community, family, and they're all rooting for you. They're all there when you get sworn in or you get promoted, but they're also there to guide you, and I think that makes a big difference.
So it's right now it's your son, you, and then your father. So
Correct.
you're on the third wave.
Third wave, and my son. I'm the only second generation chief in Brookfield right now. So my son's got a lot of pressure if he wants to take the reins
Yeah,
down the road.
Yep.
The job has changed. The fire chief's job has changed. I talk to my dad about it all the time because he was, they were doing 150, 200 calls a year, and they did some ambulance calls, and there wasn't any. OSHA and other regulations, the NIOSH and the things, all the standards that we have to abide by, and then the administrative side of what we do, and the liability, to make sure that you have the well-trained, well-disciplined fire company it's pretty great on the guys at the top.
Yeah, I over obviously, sharing experiences being fire chiefs, you when you get outside and you start talking to fire chiefs from different departments, even when you start talking to some career fire chiefs and you're explaining exactly what you have to do as a volunteer fire chief, some people are floored that you're running the show, you're running the budget, you're running the administrative side, you're running the operations side, you're speccing out vehicles, you're at City Hall filling out requisition forms, and it's amazing how much of that people don't see.
They don't. They really don't. And I'm lucky. I'm blessed. I have phenomenal line officers. I have two guys that are my assistant chiefs. I added another assistant chief last year.
Now, how many members do you have?
About 70 active, and Cannibal Company has about 15 or 20 active. So I had the 70 active. There's between fire and EMS. There's probably 55 firefighters, active, and the rest are EMS only type people. And we have a staff of 24 that just started working for the fire company. We had a vendor that we used for years that provided paramedic and EMT service. But we went out on our own. We hired a phenomenal individual to run our paramedic service, who's actually a deputy chief in the fire company. That's his rank. And he's a really cool dude, and he has put together an amazing system to really mesh with our volunteers. And that's helped out. So we have between our staff and both fire companies, about 100 people, between everything. Town, between everything, yeah.
Nice. Now, for recruiting and retention, what do you guys? So, I don't know. I go back and forth. I have varied opinions. There's sometimes I think, and I hate to be like the Debbie Downer, but I think we should all agree that the glory days of the volunteer fire department are never coming back.
Correct.
And I think there's these, I would say, fallacies where people think that there's a one-stop solution for this lack of volunteer problem, and I think it's not going to be one stop. I think it's got to be multifaceted. I mean, for years in Derby we had a tax abatement. The volunteer firefighters, and the ambulance members, they get it, and I mean, at this point now, nobody cares about it.
No.
I mean, I hate to say it, I hate to say it's just $1,000, but it's just $1,000.
We have a low SAP pension program for years of service. We have the stipend, which was a tax abatement, what they call it a stipend.
Yeah,
it's $1,500, and it gets taxed, and it doesn't cover the fuel for what we got going on. It's funny. One of the fire chief of Southbury, the former fire chief, a friend of mine, and he used to always kind of bust my chops that we have everything, because we're very fortunate. We're very well funded. We buy all our apparatus. Up to this point, it's been bought by donations. The town has never bought anything. This last engine we just got, they paid for 2/3 of. But we've financed everything except for the equipment and insurance and electricity and stuff ourselves. So we're very fortunate. We have a lot of things and access to a lot of things. And he always comes to the firehouse and he always says, "You have everything, you have everything." And I drove by his firehouse one day and he had a big sign out front that said "Members Needed." So I called him on the phone. I said, "You got something I don't have?" He goes, "What's that?" I said, "A Members Needed sign out front." And he, of course, he cursed me out. I'm very fortunate. We have a very robust, active, deep membership. I have depth on the bench. It's funny, every time our D shift works, all my pay guys are off. So if I'm going to have a fire, I want to have it.
You want to have a yeah, yeah.
But there's always some career guys around, which is great. And they're not just like guys that I'll just go to the big ones. These guys go to alarms, they pump up basements. I mean, they're really. So between the guys that are on the job, and I'm very lucky. I have a workforce that works in town, the public works, the sewer superintendent of sewers. He was my assistant chief for 3 years. He's one of my lieutenants now. Awesome dude. Second generation firefighter, gets it. Loves going to calls. Just got his EMT back. Goes to 60 years old. Goes to medical calls like a lunatic. These guys, carry the heavy workload during the day, and I'm very fortunate that I have some retired guys. Now, and there's a lot of people that are around it. The people that work from home, especially since COVID happened. A lot of guys work from home, so I don't struggle for people during the day or at night. I'm averaging almost 10 people a call, whether that's a structure fire or whether it's a fire alarm or a cellar pump out. The other day we had a structure fire about a month ago at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday, and I had 32 people from the fire company there, which is during a weekday, a work day.
Right. So it's
a big deal.
And it's funny because that's one of the things I think that the fire service, especially the volunteer fire service, took a hit on, was that homegrown. When we were kids in the valley with all the industry and everybody was working there. Now, nobody works there. So during the day, you're struggling because everybody's 10 towns away working.
Well, I always tell my membership, I come to work every 4 days, and you and I run the same shift for a long time. We still listen to calls together. You in the valley, me up there, and I don't worry about it. These guys, I'm very lucky. I have, very good officers. I have 2 assistant chiefs who are. I trust blindly. I trust all my officers blindly, and I encourage them to not look over their shoulder for me, to think outside the box, to take care of business, and if something's wrong, we'll handle it later on. But they don't need to be looking over their shoulder when I'm not there. I encourage, I've empowered them to be able to do their job when I'm not there. If the fire chief isn't there, well, next up, you're in charge, and these guys do a really good job, and they've taken that to a new level, and that's part of the homegrown thing, knowing people. And I've known the 2 guys that are my assistants for a long time. One of them for almost 30 years, the other guy for probably 15 or 20, and they're capable, competent, and as are the officers, and as are my membership. I have a lot of guys that have been there 30, 40, 50 years. I don't have to tell people what to do when they've been there for 30, 40, 50 years. They get out of the rig, they take care of business. I'm the luckiest fire chief around, and I know it because of the membership. They make me look good every day, and I'm very aware of that. I'm a lucky guy as far as that goes, because I do come to work as a chief here in Bridgeport, 24 hours every 4 days, and I listen to everybody, but I don't have to really get involved because they take care of it.
So besides the pension, the stipend, another one that I think is a big asset that some departments miss, and it's almost like a low-hanging fruit. I assume that you guys cover training costs if you want to take,
yes.
And that you'd be amazed though how many departments, or they make people jump through such hoops.
Not only do we cover them, we host the classes in Brookfield. This year, for example, we hosted Fire Officer 1, Fire Officer 2, Instructor 1. We do a Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2 in Brookfield every year. It's well attended. This year's my son's Firefighter 1 class has 33 people in it from the area. We have Pump Operator coming up, Instructor 2, and Aerial Operator, all within 18 months, all those classes that are hosted in Brookfield.
Yeah, and I think that's a low-hanging fruit that a lot of volunteer departments, and I mean, obviously in Connecticut, we know how it works, where all we do is call the fire academy and tell them, hey, we want to host these classes, and they'll do them for you. So it works out because you're paying just for your members, and
Yes.
then the rest of the class is paying to take it. So it really is such a simple way to incentivize and to keep people there.
And we also have requirements to be officers, which not a lot of people have. In order to be the fire chief, for example, you have to be Fire Officer 2, you have to have Instructor 1, and Safety Officer, and EMT, and all this other stuff. And to move up the ranks, you need to have that stuff. So if you have the classes there and you encourage people to do it, I have 32 safety officers, incident safety officers in my little department. I have over 24 fire instructors. I have 18 people that are fire officer certified. In a small volunteer fire department, that's huge. 47 of my people are firefighter too. I only have 5 firefighter ones, and those are people that got it last year, just haven't taken the class. So training is important. I also like to send people out to take classes. You know, it might be a week-long class, but if I send somebody out, one guy out, he can come back and bring, you know, kind of train the trainer type of thing. So I very rarely say no. I sent my safety officer to the safety officer convention in Florida this year.
Nice.
You know, that type of thing.
All right, well, we're right about time. Time's up, about 20 minutes. So, Chief, I want to thank you. Obviously, I plan on having you back a couple times over the course of the year.
That'd be an honor, David.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week, and have a great night.